Let's have a conversation about how the natural flow of evolution has been altered. The thing is, I think that we are pretty much all familiar with the concept of survival of the fittest and how, over the course of generations, from an evolutionary point of view, this is going to shape the species into a better and more efficient life form that is better capable of overcoming the challenges posed by its environment. Here's the thing. I think that we're pretty much all familiar with the concept of survival of the fittest and how, over the course of generations, in other words, individuals within the species that develop the adaptations that make them better adapted to exploiting the environment and become more successful as a result of their efforts. They are going to have more children, and they are going to dominate the generations that come after them. Their characteristics will end up predominating those of the species. This is the process by which evolution occurs. It's not too bad of a price. You should know that in the long term, it ends up working out extremely well for the species. But what happens when humans conquer their surroundings to the point that the challenges posed by the environment no longer have an effect on whether or not the individuals will survive? What happens if the criteria that females use to select mates evolves into a feature that is not adaptable to the environment and does not make the species any stronger? Today, we will be focusing on that particular topic. In other words, you might not be able to make it part of your skill set, but you can grasp how it would work in a hard setting with limited resources. Your family tree is going to play a significant role in determining whether or not you make it through that harsh and challenging environment. However, what happens if the environment shifts so that there is no longer a lack of resources, there is no longer a risk of being hunted, and sexual access is relatively uncomplicated? Having children is not particularly dangerous. What if the criteria to get ahead in a human social environment is your submissiveness, your willingness to capitulate to a larger group, and not your strength, not your independence, not your intelligence, not your aggressiveness, and not your fearlessness? What if it's the complete opposite of those things? What if those characteristics end up being the factors that decide whether or not an individual advances socially? So, what are the next steps? Does something like this ring a bell? Would that explain the current situation you're looking at, in which fools are getting ahead while honest, hardworking people are being punished? Where people who lie and comply with a group are rewarded, while others who think for themselves and are independent are isolated and punished? What a fantastic offer that would be if you were a moron who was overweight, unmotivated, and dishonest. I mean, it would be a wonderful deal because all you would have to do is go along to get along, and then use the rules inside the group that have been put up to advance yourself. It sounds like it would be a great deal, doesn't it? I was out doing some shopping for food. I was standing in line at the register when I noticed a young girl completing her transaction with her mother. When the mother saw the little girl assisting, she said something to the effect of, "You know, you've done a really good job. Thanks for all your help. But did you remember to, pack the meat and the milk separately?" The mother was referring to the fact that the little girl had forgotten to pack the meat and the milk separately. The little girl looked up at her mother as her mother was placing the items in the bag and murmured, "I don't think so. There's no reason we just do it that way," the mother said to her children. She pauses for a second before responding, "Well, thank you for telling me because I would have never worked that one out on my own." Consequently, you are living in a world in which the majority of the behaviors exhibited by the members in the group are things that you will never be able to comprehend. They cannot be comprehended in any way. They are not for the purpose of figuring something out. What they do cannot be explained by logic, rhyme, or reason of any kind. These are the rules that have been set up within the group that permit those who are lazy, ignorant, or dishonest to advance, while people who are hardworking and truthful are held back. Everyone in the organization is aware of the benefit of conducting business in this manner. You should know that the honorable man and woman have trouble comprehending what you are saying. They frequently engage in wasteful inefficiency and dishonesty because of the fact that the prospect of competing in an open system does not really pose a significant danger to them. They stand to gain in every possible way from it. They will progress significantly more quickly if they put in a lot of effort and also make good use of their time. But for someone who isn't as powerful or as smart as others, this is a chance. Therefore, if their success was defined by something that was not success, wouldn't it be fantastic? I am aware of how strange that may sound. To put it another way is analogous to a competitor in a sport betting on oneself to come in last place. Do you see that you do not have any control over whether or not you will win a certain event? You can put up your best effort, and depending on who your opponent or opponents are, you could or might not come out on top. Nonetheless, you have complete control over whether you win or lose each and every time, don't you? So it stands to reason that, hey, maybe this isn't it after all. You should know that no one would act in such a way. That is a dishonest statement. It's almost as if they're saying, no, this is precisely what they'll do. Now, I see why so many people admire those in middle management. They are exempt from actually carrying out any of the labor. They only need to make sure that everyone else follows the rules. They are merely tasked with enforcing the rules that have been established by others from a genetic perspective. They are not required to devise the rules themselves. I believe you can see why this is also a winning move for the people who would never be selected naturally, and I'm hoping that you can see why if they were in that position, and they know what they would do with that power and authority, and who they would try to help with it. You can see why this is a winning move for the people who would never be selected naturally, and I think you can see why this is also a winning move for the people who would never be selected naturally. They would work to eliminate and eradicate any natural competition that existed. Does something like that ring a bell? They would work hard to stifle creativity and create variations of the same product over and over again with only a few tweaks here and there. Imagine if you could just produce the same old model year after year, and imagine that if someone came out with a new car, you could say things like, "That person drinks too much, don't buy their cars." That is what they would do because innovation is very difficult and very hard, and you have to take a lot of chances. So imagine if you could just produce the same old model year after year, and imagine that. To put it another way, you would be attempting to sway people's decisions regarding everything other than the quality of the automobiles. You know, what a wonderful environment for a healthy, honest, honorable individual with integrity to attempt to make their way up in and try to succeed in. It is possible to act in a morally upstanding manner, but still failing to advance in your career. To put it another way, you run the risk of being taken advantage of and defrauded simply because you are making an effort to behave ethically. To put it another way, it's like if a man walked into a workplace with the intention of performing a decent job, but after some time, the other people in the workplace approached him and said, "What are you doing? You are attempting to bring a negative reputation on all of us. Put your foot down and take it slow. We don't put in a lot of effort around here, but if you start putting in a lot of effort around here, we're going to have to start putting in a lot of effort around here." Does that message ever get through to you? This message has been sent to me on multiple occasions, and let me assure you that I am not an idiot. That was only an attempt to make everyone look bad, as you probably already know. No, I was just attempting to do a job that was passable at best. Excuse me. You should be aware that there is also the possibility of a scenario in which a large and powerful man approaches a competition and says, "Let's fight for it." A little sickly man approaches a competition and says, Let's argue it." You then take it one step further and say, "No, we truly have to compete for the other person too." After that, you remark, "But this no longer defines who gets ahead in the world." The ability to work together with other people, regardless of whether or not you agree with them or share anything in common with them, is the most important factor in determining whether or not you will succeed in this world. And if you're asking how that's even conceivable, it's because the powerful and capable guys have already established the system where the physical competition is not necessary, so you don't have to worry about that. So if you want to compete, you don't have to worry about that. Do you see how this dysfunctional combination of characteristics starts to dominate subsequent generations as well as the environment? But only after the men who are actually powerful and capable have finished their work. After constructing a civilization along with the laws and institutions that underpin it, the less capable members of society, including women, eventually assert their desire to take control of the organization. But if the men do a lousy job and they are unable to truly establish a civilization and the culture is still, a little bit out of the Bronze Age, then the culture has only just barely advanced beyond the agrarian stage. So then vulnerable groups, such as children, women, and elderly people, don't put themselves forward, and they don't try to run anything. They are aware that this is impossible, and as a result, men have rendered themselves obsolete to their own society and civilization through their own actions. You should be aware that throughout Western civilization, man has been victimized by a horrible hoax. The terms of the social compact have been violated. Okay, if you're going to be disrespectful to the people in your group who put in the most effort and perform the greatest work so that you may show appreciation to those who aren't even a part of the group. In other words, you're going to put in a ton of effort, but we're going to give the money you earned to people who didn't put in nearly as much effort as you did, or to people who didn't put in any effort at all. How long do you anticipate that you will continue to have the motivation to work? For what length of time do you believe it will be possible for you to maintain your motivation at work? You are going to have to work, and we are going to give the money that you would normally use to pay for your own meals to somebody else who hasn't worked. So how long are you willing to work for? A couple of days, right? How much longer do you intend to play the role of the moral protagonist? Are you acting in accordance with the regulations? How long are you going to continue to play by the rules in an atmosphere or in a situation in which other people are not playing by the rules with you? Are you being fair? How much longer are you going to try to be reasonable with a system that is not trying to be reasonable with you? Therefore, this is the predicament that the man who is honest and works hard finds himself in. You are responsible for determining your own path, and you must travel along that path independently. You will automatically be included in a group if you don't do this. In order to move ahead, you are going to have to do things that you would never do, things that no respectable person would ever do. These are the kinds of things that are necessary in order to get ahead. Therefore, I think it's important for you all to have a basic comprehension of the circumstance in which you find yourselves. It is how annoying it is, how maladaptive it is, how you are actually being called upon to do the wrong thing, to capitulate in order to go along with a group that does not represent your interests. It is how you are actually being called upon to do these things. There is obviously a lot more to it than that, but as I stated before, I think you can understand why someone who can't win the race might start betting on themselves to lose the race, because that is something that they could manage. I have high hopes that this will shed some light on the competitiveness and the genetic dynamic that is taking place in front of your very eyes. And finally, I want you to see that you are participating in a dishonest game for people who are going to cheat you until the end of your life. And I'm hoping that you can understand why they do not want free, honest, hard-working men participating in their game. I want you to see that you are playing in a crooked game for people who are going to cheat you until the end of your life. I am going to refrain any further comment at this time.